This channel is part of the History Hit network.
I'm sailing up the River Nile to a realm that's existed since the dawn of time. A place ruled by pharaohs, black pharaohs. But they weren't Egyptian. This is a forgotten African civilization which, like the Egyptians to the north, built temples and pyramids that would last 5,000 years. So my journey takes me 1,000 miles up the Nile, deep into a desert where temperatures soar to 120 degrees. And here I come face to face with the black pharaohs of Africa.
Hello, I'm David Adams, and this is the Sudan. I'm about 2.5 days sailing south of the Egyptian border into what they call the Hidden Quarter. It's the least travelled part of the Great River Nile. From here to Khartoum, Sudan's desert capital, there's 1,000 miles of temples, tombs and fortresses of a culture that once ruled all Egypt herself.
As the crow flies, my journey's only 330 miles. But by river, round the great S-bend of the Nile, it's triple that distance, nearer 1,600 kilometres. But first, a little history. Nearly 3,000 years ago, in the 8th century BC, Shabaka, king of Nubia, conquered Egypt. His dynasty was to rule the Egyptian Empire for over a century, the 25th Nubian dynasty. And Shabaka was black. He and his descendants built temples and pyramids and an empire that stretched from Khartoum to Alexandria. It was a civilization that was to span 5,000 years. So to go back to the roots of this ancient African empire, I'm sailing up the Nile in the most traditional of ways. My crew is Nubian, direct descendants of those who fought for the Black Pharaohs. And I'm sailing on a felucca, a boat little changed in 3,000 years, ideally suited to what's a very user-friendly river.
And what makes the Nile really navigable is that the flow goes one way towards Egypt and Alexandria, and the north wind goes the other towards Khartoum. So boats like this can navigate up and down the Nile at will.
The Nile is Sudan's lifeline. 60% of its waters rise in the Ethiopian highlands and flood down the Blue Nile to bring nourishment to its fertile banks. But it's a very thin lifeline, a green strip extending only as far as the Nile waters can reach. Barely a mile from its banks are the scorching sands of the Nubian desert. Today, the Nubians of Sudan live in mud villages much as they've done for centuries. And I never knew mud could be made so colourful. These walls have become a canvas on which to paint vivid, geometric patterns. Again, I'm going back in time. These villages' ancestors would have once lived under the rule of the Black Pharaohs. Provided they paid their tribute and worshipped the ancient god Amun-Ra, the pharaohs would have been benevolent. If they'd defaulted, they would have incurred the pharaoh's wrath. Today, the villages are Islamic, and in true Islamic style, they extend a welcome to all strangers.
They really are incredible, these buildings. You'd think you were in Mexico with all the painted adobe houses there, instead of right in the middle of the Sudan.
School starts early in the Sudan, at 7 a.m. And as Westerners seldom pass this way, the school teacher grabs his opportunity. He wants me to tell his students about my home country, Australia.
أشهر المدن في أستراليا مجاني. Sydney.
Sydney?
Yeah, Sydney.
Yeah, that's where I come from, Sydney.
قال بونس. وثاني.
Do they know this one?
Yes.
This is the, okay, it's got big ears, okay, okay, like that, and a very big tail.
Yes.
They know this one? What's this one?
Kangaroo. Yeah.
Kangaroo.
Yeah, matches.
You know this one?
Boxes. Yeah.
Yeah? Kangaroo.
حيوان.
Like this.
I wonder what would happen if I asked Western children to name an animal in the Sudan. I'd be even more amazed if they knew where it
Thank you
was.
very much.
Thank you,
It was very good.
But
Very good
I
to
must
see
be
you.
on my way.
Goodbye. Thank you. Ciao.
It all seems so calm and peaceful here. But just across the river is an old fort. It stands as a stark reminder of rival imperial ambitions that have so often disrupted the peace of this great river. And here's another monument, a temple built by an Egyptian warrior, Amenhotep III, great-great-grandfather of Tutankhamun. It was built 4,000 years ago, and it predates King Solomon, Babylon, and the temples of classical Greece. It was from temples like these that the Black Pharaohs drew their inspiration and founded their ancient African civilization. Walking amongst these columns and fallen masonry, you can't help but admire the workmanship. They're thousands of years old, yet it seems they were carved yesterday. And where are the tourists? If this were a temple in Egypt, it would be crawling with them. But I seem to have it all to myself. In Amenhotep's day, this was an imperial outpost marking what was to him the ends of the earth. Behind was Egypt, the known world. Beyond was Black Africa and the Nubian province of Kush. And I've also reached a natural barrier, the Third Cataract. One of a series of impassable rapids that hinder all Nile travellers. My felucca can go no further.
Salam!
And as if to rub in the point, on the cliff high above the cataract, there is an old inscription warning of danger ahead. This was the original border between ancient Egypt and the Nubian province of Kush. Tomorrow, I join the trail of another warrior whose imperial ambition ran headlong into that of another would-be African pharaoh. I'm about to enter the land of Kush. The following day, sunrise is obliterated by a desert storm. Minute grains of sand and dust get in your eyes and up your nostrils. Sandstorms like this are commonplace in the Sudan and most of North Africa, and they don't make a photographer's life any easier. I'm on the Nile on my way to Dongola, where I hope to catch an old steam ferry. In it, I hope to travel to Karima, round the great S-bend of the Nile. I'm on another felucca, dwarfed by this mighty river. And it was past this very spot, nearly 3,000 years ago, that the Black Pharaohs launched their invasion north. Now wind the clock forward to just over a century ago, and we find that history repeats itself. In 1896, a conquering army also sailed past this very spot, but this one was heading south. In the 1800s, a man was born near here who believed he was sent by God. He was a sort of Islamic messiah known as the Mahdi. He too had visions of a black African empire, this time an Islamic one. Today, his followers still whip themselves into a frenzy in his memory. They're called dervishes. "120 years ago, a dervish army launched a holy war to end British colonial rule. They killed the British commander, General Gordon, at Khartoum. It was 10 years before his death would be avenged. And when vengeance came, it came in the form of this man, Lord Kitchener, later to become one of Britain's most outstanding generals. Kitchener was determined to destroy the dervish army. And to get at them, he used the River Nile. The next morning, we arrive in Dongola.
Dongola. Dongola. Fantastic.
And it was near Dongola, in 1896, that Kitchener's army first came under fire from the dervish forces. He quickly defeated them with superior firepower.
Are these the ferry boats? Is that for Karima?
لا لا شام
It's finished.
لا 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 خسران أيوة.
Well, there's my Nile ferry. Thanks to irrigation and droughts upstream, the river level is low. The result is that these once magnificent old boats have been left to rust in the mud. So my plan to travel under steam, like Lord Kitchener, won't work. It's a riverboat graveyard. This is all that's left of a riverboat culture that grew up along the Nile. It was based on British imperial power, but it was romantic just the same.
Imagine what it would have been like living on these riverboats for days on end. Really like Agatha Christie in Death on the Nile. First-class passengers would have been reclining in these lovely little cabins, drinking their gin and tonics, while the Sudanese all rode down below. It's still about 500 miles down to Khartoum, and it would have been quite a long trip, but in a boat like this, in those days, would have been wonderfully luxurious.
The Battle of Dongola was Kitchener's first success. Dongola is famous for its markets, stacked with produce from the Nile. Today, as in 1896, there's enough food to feed an army. And it's in these markets that I meet Ramadan. Ramadan is also bound for Karima. He tells me there's only one way to get there quickly, but it means abandoning the river and going by bus.
So how long does the bus take to get to Karima?
2 days.
Yeah?
Yeah, we take 2 days and desert and many sand and yeah. But Karima is very beautiful also.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. And Jebel Barkal.
Jebel Barkal, and there is a Puru also.
But you were stopping in Karima?
Yeah, we stop in Karima. Yeah.
That's the good news. The bad news is that the bus doesn't leave until the day after tomorrow.
So it's 2 days waiting.
Yeah, it's waiting.
There's not many buses in this country.
Yeah, we must wait until that. Oh, take the tea. Say shukran.
The Sudanese are a nation of tea drinkers. So we discuss travel plans
So 2 days
over a
till
glass
Alaska.
of sweet minted tea.
Is there much to see around Dongola?
Dongola is also famous for its cooking. Perhaps I can relax and enjoy some Sudanese cuisine. But Ramadan suggests another form of cooking.
You may think that being buried 30 kilometres out in the desert is some sort of Sudanese torture. Actually, it's something that a lot of people travel a long way to do, because this sand has incredible properties, and anybody with rheumatism who gets buried here for an hour or two walks away with almost no pain. Well, for me, because I don't have rheumatism, this is actually like a hot sauna. Well, probably in an hour or two I'll just be nicely baked. But it actually is very pleasant, I think. Ramadan, could you grab my hat? I'm going to fry out here. Thanks, mate. Now, how long do I have to stay out here?
What do you want? 2 hours, 3 hours? No problem.
I think I'll be cooked like a turkey.
It reminds me of an ancient funereal custom of the Black Pharaohs. When a pharaoh died, he expected all his wives, courtiers, guards and palace staff to be buried with him, alive. It's getting hot, very hot. Soon I'll be mummified like a pharaoh. They put a cover over me as the sun rises higher and higher in the desert sky. And by now, I seem to have acquired quite an audience. But I can't let them watch me cook forever. We must get back to Dongola. We've got a bus to catch. It's a 200-mile journey, which means a 12-day camel ride with a caravan. I'm very glad we've got a place on this bus.
The bus is full. Let's go and talk.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Let's go there. Thanks.
There's no room inside, which means we have to sit up on the roof. Not to worry. Up here, it's a dress circle view.
Very good.
African desert buses are very colourful, and I don't mean just their design. And you've got to love that horn.
much wind. You know how can you do it? Yeah? Put it on.
To keep the dust out of my mouth and the sun off my head, Ramadan insists I wear an emma, a form of Sudanese turban.
That's great.
As we hurtle deeper into the desert, my mind goes back to Kitchener's army just over a century ago. "25,000 men marching through this desert. I'm glad I was born in the age of motorized transport. Two days later, dusty and tired, we arrive in the town of Karima. And before we say our goodbyes, Ramadan helps me to find a hotel.
So this is the only guest house in town, huh?
Yes, this is the
That looks fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
See you.
It was great having such a knowledgeable guide.
Okay, thank you for you.
Thank you.
And as I drift off to sleep, my mind goes back to Nubia and that ancient African empire. I'm about to enter a land of pyramids and temples built by the Black Pharaohs thousands of years ago. This was the place from where they set out to dominate much of the known world. It was also the place where the kings became gods. At first sight, Karima is just another North African desert town on the banks of the River Nile. But it was once an imperial city that used to rule the Sudan and Egypt far beyond. Towering over Karima is Jebel Barkal. At its foot, temples and burial grounds dating back to the days of the Black Pharaohs. This was their sacred mountain. It was from here that they drew their royal power. And it was from here, nearly 3,000 years ago, that they launched their conquest of Egypt and beyond. In ancient times, this was the center of a belief system that linked gods and kings. It was here they believed heaven and earth were joined.
Well, this is the seat of the gods. This is where Amun-Ra, the great god of the Kush and the Egyptians, was worshipped. And from this pinnacle, there was a huge plaque of gold that shone out into the desert and declared to everybody that this was the center of Amun-Ra and the worship of their great god.
And why wouldn't they think this place was sacred? It was the highest point in their firmament. From here, they could survey their capital, much of their kingdom, and its life-giving artery, the River Nile. Deep inside the mountain is a secret labyrinth. On the walls are inscriptions that have survived nearly 3 millennia. their colours perfectly preserved in the dry desert air. Even the most powerful of the black pharaohs feared this place, for here lived the god kings, where monarchs prayed and hoped to become gods themselves. It was their belief in Amun-Ra that inspired their holy war to conquer Egypt. But now their gods have fallen, their temples are no longer sacred, and their kings are long forgotten. Back in town, there's an event on, a wedding. And weddings are the ultimate in Sudanese hospitality. The whole town celebrates. I'm in town, so automatically I'm expected to attend. It would be rude not to. This is the bridegroom, and if he's looking a little bit apprehensive, there may be a good reason why. Most marriages in the Sudan are arranged, so it's quite possible he's never even set eyes on his future wife until today. Central to every marriage is the contract, normally drawn up after months and months of wrangling. So today's the day when the contract is supposed to be signed and the dowry paid.
Well, the signing's almost finished, and after that, all the men are going to move out of here and join the women for what is only referred to as a festival. The problem is, they can't find the groom.
The celebrant says a prayer. And suddenly, there's the sound of gunfire. A shot is supposed to signal the end of prayers. And then there's another shot for the signing of the contract. That's if this guy can get his gun to work. And I wish he'd stop pointing the damn thing in my direction. I half wonder if this is the origin of the phrase shotgun wedding, but events have overtaken him. They found the bridegroom, but he's about to leave.
It looks like it's all over before it really began. Something about a family tiff, the drummer ran out. The families have divided, the groom's in one vehicle, the bride's in another, and they're disappearing. Apparently it happens all the time in Sudanese weddings.
And it's time I was leaving too. I still want to visit the pyramids of the ancient kingdom of Kush. To do that, I must go further up the Nile and head into the desert. Fortunately, Lord Kitchener's army left behind a transport system to get there.
Salam.
Karima Station looks as if it were built for an English country town, but there's not much English spoken here. So for me, buying this ticket is a bit of a lottery.
I'm not really sure where I've actually bought the ticket to. Could have been Port Sudan. It was very cheap. It was only about $10. So if I get to Khartoum, it'll be a very cost-effective journey.
The line goes from Karima up the Nile Valley, then hopefully south to Khartoum. On the way, I'll stop near Meroe, but for the moment, I just need to get on this train. The first thing to realise about trains in Sudan is that they're very crowded. I thought I'd got here early, but obviously not quite early enough. The second thing to learn about them is that they leave on time. At least this one does. As we leave Karima, we travel through the thin green line, the narrow ribbon of fertility that owes its existence to the Nile. Then, as as if to rub home the point, quite suddenly we're in the open desert. Next stop, well, I'm not too sure about that, but I'm told we're heading in the general direction of Khartoum.
Travelling on these trains, I think it's a lot like India. They're absolutely packed, but it works kind of the same way as the villages. Everybody shares their food, and even though it's a really long trip, and I don't speak much Arabic, it's not a bad way to travel, really.
That's if you don't mind sitting on the floor, but I'm too tired to worry. Soon the lurching motion sends me to sleep as we head out across a sandy sea of nothingness. But as I was to find out, getting on the train is the easy bit. As I approach the ancient pyramids of the Black Pharaohs, getting off turns out to be a leap into the unknown. When the British Empire held sway over this part of Africa, one of its lasting legacies was the rail system it left behind. This is the Sudan section of what imperialists like Lord Kitchener hoped would one day become the great Cape Town to Cairo railway. I've now done some 500 miles of my journey as I head towards Khartoum, and I'm hoping to get off this train near the ancient Pyramids of Meroe. But I see no station, and this train shows no sign of stopping or even slowing. It really only leaves me one option.
I don't think that was the smartest move in the world. Jumping off trains I don't recommend. Don't know if I actually broken my collarbone, but I've certainly given it a hell of a jar. So we'll just see what happens. But I wouldn't recommend jumping off trains.
As the train disappears into a mirage, I head into the shimmering desert with a rather bruised shoulder. On the horizon, my destination, Pyramids of Meroe. Nothing better illustrates the power of the River Nile than this wilderness. I'm well beyond its irrigating reach in a wasteland ruled only by sun and wind. But even out here, you're never entirely alone. Though I wasn't expecting this.
Hey!
Yeah.
G'day.
How are you doing?
Good, man. I never expected to see anybody out here.
Well, you're the first traveller that I've seen north of Khartoum.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where are you headed?
Well, I'm heading north to Wadi Halfa. Try to catch a ferry there, across Lake Nasser, going to Egypt.
Wonderful. We've just come from that way. I've just actually come down on the Nile.
Yeah.
So where have you been? I mean, it looks like you've been around the world.
Yeah, it's actually a round the world trip. Started 1995 from Germany, and that's where I'm heading now. I'm on my way home.
So how long till you get home?
I don't know. It will probably be another 6 months.
So he heads north, and I continue south. They call these the Forgotten Pyramids. Because of a Western obsession with Egypt, the Sudan is not on the tourist trail. So these pyramids are rarely seen by Westerners. And yet there are more pyramids here in the Sudan than there are in Egypt. And out here in the middle of nowhere, I guess this is the closest I'll get to hiring a taxi.
Yes. Want to get a camel? Is okay?
In ancient Egyptian terms, these pyramids are relatively new, a mere 2,400 years old. But in terms of Western discovery, they're even newer. They weren't seen at all by outsiders until the middle of the 19th century. They've never been properly excavated, but they were built by the Black Pharaohs. They're smaller and steeper than the better-known Egyptian pyramids, and like them, they've been vandalized by tomb raiders. They tell me that 19 kings are buried here, along with 53 queens, countless slaves, attendants, dogs, horses and other animals. And buried with them was gold and precious stones.
Take some photos. I guess you'd have to say that this would rate as one of the wonders of the world, and it would be more wonderful if all the tops of these pyramids were intact. But what happened in 1836 or so is an Italian treasure hunter came down here and blew the tops off them all, trying to find some gold. And he found gold in one, but by the time he'd pulled it out, all the local people were so angry that he had to flee for his life. Pity they didn't get him.
To just stand in a place like this is truly awesome. These monuments stand as testimony to a black African civilization that predated Julius Caesar, Christianity, and Alexander the Great. But its inspiration came from much earlier, 4000 BC, from the very dawn of civilization itself. Its culture became its own, its carving, its hieroglyphics, its architectural style. And after the 25th dynasty, it was to last another 1,000 years, only to be eclipsed by the arrival of Islam in 650 AD. But as I gaze at these ruined walls, I see graffiti of a more recent age, the scratchings of adventurers and Europeans. Once more, I'm on the trail of Kitchener's army as he marched relentlessly on Khartoum. Almost a century ago, he built a military railway to supply his troops. This is part of that line. There's an old Sudanese saying, if you see a train, catch it. They also say that if you hail a passing train, it will stop for you. And while this isn't exactly a train, it'll do. But it's going a lot faster than it looks. I think they're trying to tell me that they can't stop. If I want a lift, I'll have to jump. A great way to cruise into El Kadab. Here I'm told there's a real Nile steamer that can take me up to Khartoum. It's taken me nearly 3 weeks to get this far. It took Lord Kitchener 2 years, and it was from here that he prepared for the final showdown.
Okay, thank you.
At last, I get my chance to ride an old Sudanese Nile ferry. And what a wonderful way to travel down Africa's longest river. In 1898, it's how Lord Kitchener would have entered the city. And it's how I entered the city a century later. Back in 1898, a boat like this would have been bristling with guns. Kitchener used a flotilla of them to bombard Khartoum. And these guys' forebears would have been on the receiving end, pawns in a great political game beyond their control. I've now completed nearly 1,000 miles of my Nile travels in the wake of Kitchener's army, and now I'm near journey's end. I want to make a small detour to witness a very special event. But first, my taxi driver has to fight his way through Khartoum's chaotic traffic. It's grand final day for a wrestling contest. And as with all grand finals, the rival teams need their cheer squads. These are the legendary Nuba wrestlers. Not to be confused with Nubians, these proud fighters come from the Nuba Mountains south of Khartoum. And this is their traditional sport. The wrestlers cover themselves with ochre, and it's on. The rules are simple. Make your challenge, then try to throw your opponent on the ground. It's an endless cycle of challenge, wrestle, throw. While the cheer squads show no sign of losing voice. While the Sudan's strict Islamic code officially disapproves of wrestling, it was this fighting spirit which the Mahdi drew on when he tried to forge his North African Islamic empire. And it was this fighting spirit that took the British by surprise over a century ago. The final showdown came at the Battle of Omdurman. This is where the Dervish army dug in. And here they waited for the British and Egyptian troops to arrive. And when they did, it was a massacre. A medieval Dervish army against Kitchener's modern war machine.
Can you imagine what it would have been like manning these defences for months and months on end while this enormous army advanced from the north? And then when it did arrive and Kitchener sailed his boat up the Nile and fired the first shot on the Mahdi's tomb, it was hardly Britain's finest hour. For 48 British dead, 25,000 martyrs lay dead or dying on this battlefield.
The Battle of Omdurman was a slaughter. Spears and daggers were no match for the British artillery. It was at Omdurman that a new weapon would come into its own: the machine gun. So today, perhaps it's not surprising that the Sudanese, like the Black Pharaohs before them, would wish to control their own destiny, just as the Islamic Messiah, the Mahdi, had tried to do over a century ago. Every Friday at sundown, the descendants of the Dervish army come together. This was how they prepared for battle. Today, it's how they make contact with God. And as the word dervish means poor man, that's how they turn out. Some even wearing clothes made from rags. For them, this is a transport of the soul, taking them beyond their ordinary lives and giving them a glimpse of the life in the hereafter. And as they fall into a trance from the ecstasy of the dance, I wonder if they're drawing on an earlier tradition. One day, they believe, another Messiah, another Mahdi, will be sent by God. So why such an obsession with their self-determination? Maybe they look back to a time long ago when, under the mysterious Black Pharaohs, the Sudan briefly ruled an empire, which became the envy of the known world. Or maybe, after thousands of years of turmoil, they're sick of being pushed around. As I head back down the river of life, I realize there's one reason for all of this, one cause of all their sorrows and joys, and I'm sailing on it. It's the River Nile. So I'll leave you with the words of a young British Army officer who fought at the Battle of Omdurman. His name was Winston Churchill, and he wrote of the Nile, "It is the life of this land through which it flows. Without the river, none would have started. Without it, none would have continued. Without it, none would have ever returned." They say that if you drink from the Nile, you'll return. One day, I shall return on another of my journeys to the ends of the earth. Up in the Himalayas, on the northern fringes of Pakistan, you find some of the most intimidating high mountain peaks on Earth. It's why the great explorer Marco Polo named this place the roof of the world. And below these mighty peaks lie valleys untouched by modern civilization. This is a world where supernatural forces and ancient mysteries control people's daily lives. One valley in particular has captured the imagination of the world. A place so perfect, so harmonious, that it brought health, long life, and enlightenment to all who lived there. To find it, I must climb rugged mountain peaks, cross glaciers and snowfields, as I search for the truth behind Shangri-la.
Hello, I'm David Adams, and this is the mighty Indus River. It flows from high in the Himalayas down across Pakistan. And up near its source, there's supposed to be a place called Shangri-la.
So my search starts in northern Pakistan, a country sandwiched between Afghanistan, India, and China. From Peshawar, I head northwest into the Hindu Kush, then east to the Hunza Valley, in the heart of the Himalayas. Peshawar is a frontier city, and that's what its name means, frontier town. You can get anything in Peshawar, and I'm here to do a bit of research. I'm looking for a book called Lost Horizon, a British novel that provides the inspiration for my journey. And in Peshawar, there's a shop that should surely stock books by British authors, the London Book Company. Lost Horizon is an escapist fantasy about a utopia hidden somewhere in the Himalayas. It was written in the 1930s by James Hilton, and it quickly became a bestseller. Basically, it's the story of 4 travellers escaping from war-torn Afghanistan who get lost in the Himalayas. They're rescued and taken to a Buddhist monastery called Shangri-la. There, they find a modern-day utopia, a haven of peace and harmony, a place where people live to be over 200 years old. Their adventure starts in a plain high over the Himalayas. Of course, there was no Shangri-la. Hilton himself claimed it was a fictional place. But with the Western world on the brink of World War II, people wanted to believe it, and so a myth grew up. Maybe Hilton was hiding something. Maybe Shangri-La was inspired by a real valley, somewhere down there.
Well, the only clue that James Hilton gives us as to the whereabouts of Shangri-La is to say that the plane flew past K2 and Nanga Parbat, 2 of the highest mountains in the world. After that, it simply disappeared.
Nanga Parbat is a tantalising landmark. But for anyone who survived an aeroplane crash in the 1930s, the chances of survival up here would have been slim. They'd have had to trek through deep snowfields and treacherous glaciers. They'd have had to breathe in a rarefied atmosphere at altitudes of 20,000 feet, 6,000 metres or higher. And then there are the crevasses, deep holes below the ice, ravines covered for centuries by ice and snow.
From the left side.
Every footstep must be planned. Every footstep could be your last. Nanga Parbat is the mountain that was James Hilton's last connection with reality. The place where the plane crash of Lost Horizon and the real world come together.
Well, we didn't quite make it to the viewpoint of Nanga Parbat. The snow's getting a bit too deep, and I can tell you it's very cold. I'm sounding a bit funny because my mouth is freezing up, as it's about minus 20. This is, without doubt, one of the most extreme places on Earth.
But despite these dreadful conditions, people have been coming here for centuries, looking for Shangri-la. The first was Alexander the Great. 2,500 years ago, his armies came in search of the Fountain of Youth. His quest started where mine starts, in the Bombaret Valley, a remote corner of Pakistan, on the border of Afghanistan. This is the home of a remote mountain tribe called the Kalash.
It seems a very peaceful life here.
Yeah.
Before my guide Jinnah takes me to see the living Kalash, he takes me to see the dead. This is what's left of their graveyard, bones and coffins scattered by grave robbers and vandals. The reason? Pakistan is an all-Muslim country, and the Kalash are the last surviving non-Muslim minority.
It's very old and it's broken.
For 1,000 years, their Muslim overlords have called them Kafirs, the non-believers. As a result, they are an oppressed people. This desecrated graveyard, just one example of their persecution.
These were not Kalash people who took away the bones.
No, Kalash don't take.
They were Islamic people.
Yeah.
Once 80,000 of them lived in this valley. Today, there are barely 2,500. If anything, the Kalash look more European than Pakistani. There's an amazing prevalence of blue eyes and blonde hair amongst them. And there may be a good reason why. They say that even if Alexander the Great didn't find his Shangri-la, some of his soldiers did. They stayed on and intermarried with the Kalash, who still carry their genes. Not only that, but they're remarkably hospitable. Any visitor to this valley must drink the obligatory cup of tea.
Thank you very much.
So have you heard of the name Shangri-La? A place called, a mystical place called Shangri-La?
Yeah, the name I know. The Shangri-La is it's a good place. The people say one.
So do you think it's possible to find it?
Shangri-La is very far.
Far from here?
Yeah.
Have I got a long way to
Yeah,
travel? to
maybe
find
it's in the Gilgit side,
Yeah.
somewhere. I think it's the special virus.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So if I'm to find Shangri-La, I must seek elsewhere. I cannot stay long in this beautiful valley. Jinnah is heading south to Chitral, and there's an event on in town that he wants me to see. But there's another, more compelling reason why I must keep moving. As the great snow-clad peaks glow in the alpine light, they send out a chilling warning. Winter is approaching. My search for Shangri-La will be a race against time, as the early snows of the Himalayas threaten to cut me off and imprison me in this remote corner of the Hindu Kush. Every autumn, the wild horsemen of northwest Pakistan put their strength, courage, and horsemanship to the test. This is a game as old as Central Asia itself. It's called Buzkashi, and the object of their attention is a headless, legless goat. I'm in the frontier town of Chitral, up near the Pakistan-Afghan border. This ancient Afghan game isn't for the faint-hearted. Once a horseman has the goat, the opposition does everything in its power to get it off him. Which means a melee of grabbing, struggling horsemen, until someone makes a break. As far as I can see, there are few rules. Anything goes. Jinnah tells me a lot of old scores are settled on the Buzkashi field. Buzkashi started as a practice for warriors to pick their wounded comrades from the field of battle. And new heroes are still created with every game. But if I'm to find Shangri-La, I must keep moving. The first autumn snows are already falling, and there's only one road out of the Chitral Valley. Time to hitch a ride.
We're just coming up to the Lawari Pass, which is about 2,800 metres high. About 4 or 5 months of the year, it's cut off by metres of snow. And that's what makes these valleys so separate from each other and why the cultures are so different, because you just can't travel for many months of the year. It should be open now, even though it's November and the snows have started to fall, but you just never know in this country if you can get through or not.
I've now left the Hindu Kush, and I'm entering the Himalayas proper. My destination is the Swat Valley. That's if we ever get over this pass. Because of the snow, the road is too narrow for passing. And since there's no regulation of traffic up here, vehicles going up come face to face with vehicles going down. And there they stop and argue. Eventually, they manage to dig away the snow. They tell me that this happens every autumn. It's crazy, but that's the way it is. Well, we made it, but it was slow, nearly 8 hours to travel just 50 miles, or 80 kilometres. I'm passing through the Swat Valley, which should by rights have had a claim to being the inspiration for Shangri-la, because this valley was the birthplace of Tantric Buddhism. Not that long ago, there were over 1,400 Buddhist monasteries in this one valley alone. Today, Islam holds sway, and the relics of its Buddhist past have suffered accordingly.
This is one of the sadder realities of this part of the world. This was once a Buddhist civilization, and these sculptures are all over the place. But sadly, because in Islam you can't portray a deity, they stone them, hence all the stones around here. It's one of the sadder things about this part of the world.
Where once there was a peaceful Buddha's face, the icons of Western consumerism have been pasted. So how did James Hilton envisage Shangri-La? The words of Lost Horizon come flooding back.
Shangri-La was touched with mystery. Listening intently, he could hear gongs and trumpets, and also the massed wail of voices. He found the traditions, both Buddhist and Christian, very reassuring. The whole atmosphere was more of wisdom than of learning. The High Lama had skill in telepathy and powers of healing. The monks had discovered the key to longevity, to semi-immortality.
30 or so years after Hilton wrote those words, another group of people searching for Shangri-La flocked to the Swat, the hippies. This was one of the stopping off points on the Hippie Trail, leading from San Francisco to Kathmandu. In fact, the Swat's always been something of a haven for foreigners. 100 years ago, the British came seeking relief from bustling towns like Peshawar. It was they who stocked its rivers with trout. My companion Moambar Khan has benefited from both associations. He likes fish, and he used to run a boarding house catering exclusively to hippies, even if he didn't always approve of them.
Woman, like, if woman legs is looking, legs, this is bad in Islam. When the woman here looking, this also bad in Islam. But if you take your trouser out and you put short trouser, and when you walk now, also the people put you stone or say, look, this stupid man.
So if I was wearing short pants, would they throw stones at me?
Yes, and they're thinking, "Pa, you very bad man."
Yeah.
Because like you, like animal, no understand. Go in the street and no clothes.
The hippies are long gone. Free love and Islam were never going to mix, nor were the guns. 2 valleys east of the Swat is the town of Bisham. No one bats an eyelid here as gunfire racks the streets. Guns are a way of life. Blood feuds are an institution. These inter-family, inter-tribal battles cause thousands of deaths every year. The penalties of the ancient system magnified 1,000 times by the killing power of modern weapons. Machine guns, rifles, shotguns, pistols, all made right here, despite what the labels say.
It says made in Italy here. Not made in Italy, made in Bisham.
They make ammunition here too. It's estimated that 60% of all Pakistani men own a gun. In fact, more children will learn to use a gun here than will finish school. So, a valley that makes so many deadly weapons is hardly a place of harmony and boundless peace. Like the hippies, it's time for me to go. But my next stop is hardly Shangri-La either. I'm about to come face to face with the supernatural at a Pakistani exorcism. I'm high in the Himalayas on the main road linking Pakistan to China, the Karakoram Highway. Each year in Pakistan, they hold a competition to see who's got the most beautifully painted truck. Trucking here is a family affair, and each family takes pride in making its truck more gaudy and highly decorated than the next. But there's a religious side to it too. The paintings are spiritual, symbols that will hopefully protect their trucks from the dangers of the road. And it's in one of these mobile art galleries that I hitch a lift up the Karakoram Highway. The highway takes me deep into the Karakoram Ranges, a part of the Himalayas which boasts some of the world's highest peaks. As we drive, I follow the valley of the Indus. In James Hilton's novel Lost Horizon, Shangri-La was supposed to be somewhere near the source of this great river. So in theory, if I follow the Indus Valley, I should find Shangri-La. At the wheel is a Pathan. My travelling companion is also a Pathan, a member of another warlike tribe that lives up near the Afghan border. All across Pakistan, it's the Pathans who dominate the trucking industry.
You are first to visit in this area?
Yes, first time. I've travelled in Srinagar, in India,
Indian, yeah.
and also in Afghanistan, but not up here.
Not up here.
So do they think that if their truck is very beautiful, they will get more business?
No, this is for not business. This is for
pride.
For pride. Yes.
Well, I've never seen anything like them. They're wonderful trucks.
Yeah.
And very comfortable up here too. Huh?
Yeah, thanks.
It's a good way to ride.
The higher we go, the closer we get to the roof of the world, the lofty Karakoram Ranges, where the world's second highest peak, K2, reaches over 28,000 feet. That's over 8,500 metres. But if I want to get to my spiritual Shangri-la, I must abandon the truck. Where I'm going, there are no roads. As I draw closer to my destination, I'm warned to be careful. The locals believe powerful spirits, fairies, live on the snowline. Keeping on the right side of these fairy spirits is very important indeed. This is a superstitious world. This man is believed to be the subject of a curse. He's not responding to conventional doctor's treatment. He's feverish and his body's racked with pain. So they call in a shaman, a medium who communes with the spirit world. It's hoped he can locate the cause of the problem. The shaman inhales smoke from smouldering juniper leaves. Juniper smoke and deep breathing induces a trance. This seems almost theatrical, not real, but it's not to be taken lightly. People here have an unshakable faith in the supernatural. Those who believe themselves to be cursed often die. All at once, the shaman runs outside. At first, I admit I suspect a trick, but the ground is undisturbed. I watch carefully. How does he know to dig here? Obviously, the shaman thinks there's something here causing the old man's disease. And then he finds it, a piece of skull wrapped in a rag, an evil spell placed by an enemy, a curse. But the trance isn't over. He continues his communion with the spirit world until, totally exhausted, he faints. I was told that a few days later, the old man started to show signs of recovery. As for the shaman, his job isn't over yet. Tomorrow, in an extraordinary public séance, he becomes a prophet for the whole village. Maybe through his otherworldly contacts, he can help me find my Shangri-la. Much of Pakistan is Islamic in the extreme, but up here, in the country's far north, villagers still often commune with the supernatural. Today the shaman uses his spiritual powers to establish contact with the dreaded mountain spirits. He's trying to find out what they have in store for the village for the rest of the year.
I'd have to say, I've never photographed anything like this before. I've never seen anything like it anywhere I've travelled.
Once more, the juniper smoke does its work, inducing a deep trance in the shaman, who's now hallucinating. In his ecstasy, he translates the fairy prophecy. If he looks sad, the news is bad. If he looks happy, the news is good. Fortunately for the villagers, he looks happy. At pagan rituals like this, they slaughter a goat, and in a macabre twist, the shaman grabs it. Here, the blood of a goat's head is said to be fairy milk. I had half a mind to ask the fairies through the shaman if they could help me find Shangri-la, but I guess this was their reply. The trance lifts. The shaman leaves his fairy world and is back in the world of reality, and totally exhausted. His party may be over, but it's only just starting for the villagers. As he washes the blood from his face, they celebrate the fairy message. It'll be a good season and a prosperous year for the farmers of this valley. As for me, I have an appointment further up the Karakoram Highway, towards the Chinese border. My destination, Gilgit. Gilgit is a town little known outside Pakistan. However, to the locals, it's known as the home of a game which has become associated throughout the world with the rich and famous. Polo.
Oh, I know. I'm just, I like to get a horse to know me before I get on him. He smells me and he knows me. That's good. Let's just take these down a bit.
But you don't have to be rich to play polo in Gilgit. You just have to be a good rider. And while I've ridden horses all my life, I've never played polo. Actually, the game had its origins in Persia, but it was Gilgit that gave it its name. Polo means ball in the local language, and hitting a polo isn't easy. Back in the days of the Raj, when the British Army was here, the cavalry officers were captivated by this game. That's how polo travelled to England, and then on to the rest of the world. But it just doesn't seem to be my game. And it didn't get any better. These guys are just brilliant riders.
Come on, David, come on. Stop playing, hurry up. Make it. Come on, David, wide. So you have to play a forceful shot.
Well, at least I got to hit the ball. Once.
Well, I can't say I've done anything like this. Most fantastic game, just I'm really bad at it.
I tell my companions why I'm here, to search for the lost valley of Shangri-La. They tell me that they know of a crashed plane near a town called Skardu. Maybe it's the one that inspired James Hilton. According to Hilton's novel Lost Horizon, Shangri-La was supposed to be near the headwaters of the Indus River. It's also supposed to be somewhere not too far from the mountain Nanga Parbat. That makes Skardu a candidate. But this hardly looks like paradise on Earth. The Upper Indus Valley is one of the most barren places I've ever seen. It's also Kashmir, disputed territory, land claimed by both India and Pakistan. A war zone is an unlikely setting for Shangri-La. But it's here all right. It's a 1970s theme resort. And it's where I'm staying. As we drive closer, there's the remains of the crashed plane I was told about. The buildings have a Buddhist air about them, but closer inspection reveals that my journey is far from over. An out-of-season tourist facility, cashing in on the Lost Horizon myth, might be someone's idea of Shangri-La, but it's hardly mine. Mind you, the lake does lend an air of peace, and after 10 days on the road, this tea is wonderfully therapeutic. And as this commercial Shangri-La works its relaxing charms, I plan the last leg of my journey. Tomorrow, I travel to the Hunza Valley, a place where people live to be well over 100 years old, and where I find my own private Shangri-La. Hidden deep in North Pakistan, not far from the world's second highest peak, K2, is Skardu. This remote town is a mecca for climbers. This is where they hire camping and rock climbing equipment before attempting some of the world's highest mountains. And it's not far from here that I hope to find the inspiration for the mythical valley of Shangri-La. I've travelled more than 500 miles from Peshawar on the Pakistan-Afghan border. From Skardu, I head north towards the Chinese border, where I enter the Hunza Valley. But first, a game that's penetrated the remotest corners of the old British Empire. Cricket. The crew and I are challenged to a match, Australia versus Pakistan. And it's not long before they have us on the ropes. Back in the days when the British Army ruled India and what's now Pakistan, this was literally the ends of the earth. Or the earth as the British knew it some 70 years ago. Below this fort's walls was the known world, cities, order, civilization. Beyond was the great unknown, the setting for James Hilton's Lost Horizon.
Well, as you can see, this fort commands quite a presence over the valley. These were actually the last bastions of the British. Beyond here, it was unknown. And when James Hilton wrote his book in the 1930s, if anybody travelled even this far, it was eminently possible that a place like Shangri-la could exist, because no one knew what lay beyond.
So if I'm to find the place that provided James Hilton's inspiration, I must enter this great beyond. The Hunza Valley is on the other side of these ranges. The roads are rocky and few people pass this way, or certainly the way I'm going. And as I enter the valley, I immediately get a sense of the timelessness I'm looking for. So what other clues are there? It's beautiful and there's an air of peace to it. There's also a great many old people. In fact, the Hunza is legendary for its healthy old population. It's said that up here, people regularly live well past 100 years of age, if not older. But if this is the valley of Shangri-la, there must be a Buddhist monastery. And there it is. At the head of the valley sits a building with a distinctly Buddhist look. A building that fits the description of Shangri-la better than any I'd seen anywhere in the Himalayas.
Seeing it first, it was indeed a strange and half-incredible sight. A group of pavilions clung to the mountainside with the chance delicacy of flower petals impaled upon a crag. An austere emotion carried the eye upward to the grey rock bastion above.
Under the pavilion-like features of this ancient building, I enter, unsure as to what I'll find. Is this a place of enlightenment? Could it be a place that once entered, you never want to leave? I sense I'm alone, And then again, I'm not sure. As I travelled through the narrow corridors and caught glimpses of vistas that showed how beautiful the valley was, I felt that it may well be the place that inspired Shangri-La. In the book, the travellers who finally arrived at Shangri-La always had a sense that they were being watched, that the monks and other residents never had more than a faint physical presence. As I wander the corridors and rooms of this strange, deserted building, I too get a faint sense of the people who once lived here. History relates that this fort was built in the 15th century by a family that ruled the Hunza. When a daughter got married, craftsmen came here from Tibet to create the beautiful buildings seen today. So perhaps that explains this building that's more fort than monastery. But the question remains, was this the inspiration for James Hilton's fantasy called Shangri-La? As I read on the terrace above the valley, as if by magic, the answer appears. Ijaz is the custodian of this building. He's lived in the Hunza all his life. If anyone knows of its links to the Shangri-La myth, surely he does.
Before the arrival of British, this was an independent kingdom. Finally, the British were fearing of a possible Russian movement through this valley down to India. That is why we had a battle with British troops in December 1891.
And so what happened after the British came? Did it change?
No, until 1938. Probably this was the time when James Hilton, the writer of...
So you think he came here?
I suppose he came here.
So this might have been what he designed Shangri-La as?
This might have been an inspiration for writing his famous novel.
Yeah? Ijaz may believe that James Hilton could have come here, but I'm not so sure. Though, it doesn't matter either way. I set out on this journey knowing that Shangri-La was the invention of a master storyteller, and it does no harm to believe that heaven could exist on earth. James Hilton believed each of us needed a place like Shangri-La to escape to, even if only in our imagination, a place of hope, a safe haven from the rigours of the world. So for me, this has been as much a search for inner happiness as it's been an external journey to find Shangri-La, my heaven at the ends of the earth. South America. For 500 years, a warrior people ruled over Peru and beyond. They were called the Inca, the people of the sun. They built great cities like Machu Picchu, where they worshipped the sun and sacrificed virgins to their gods. Eventually, they would be destroyed by Spanish invaders searching for gold and glory. I'm here seeking a city perhaps even greater than Machu Picchu, one of many still lost in these jungles, where the Incas' history and perhaps their treasure lie undisturbed. Hi, I'm David Adams, and this is the remote cloud forest of the Peruvian ranges. And this is where the last of the Incas found their refuge, and it's where they built their golden cities, and that's why I'm here. Because hidden somewhere in this jungle vastness, legend says there are cities still waiting to be found. Cities never sacked by the Spanish. Cities that may conceal hidden Inca treasure, or even the holy grail of the Inca Empire, the great golden disk of the sun. Meet Gary Ziegler, an archaeologist, and someone I've come halfway around the world to meet. Gary's devoted his life to exploring Peru's jungle. If I'm to have any chance of finding a lost city, it's going to be with Gary's help.
We found this wonderful major Inca road, and these Inca roads always go somewhere, so it's a good place to look for ruins.
How are you sure that no one else has been up there?
Well, there's nothing recorded on maps, so it's a really good chance that that no one's been up there.
That's great.
But I'm pretty sure that we're going to find something significant up there.
The Vilcabamba, the Incas' final refuge, the place from which they waged war on the Spanish, and where they built their lost cities. To get there, I plan to head through this sacred valley, down the Urubamba River, before arriving at the very edge of the Amazon basin. But my journey starts in the old Inca capital, Cusco. In the late afternoon light, it's easy to imagine Cusco in its heyday, as the city of gold, so intoxicating to the first Europeans to see it. Right now, it's midwinter in the southern hemisphere. Time for Inti Raymi, the festival of the sun. The oldest surviving Inca celebration, a vital link to Peru's past. Gary Ziegler's seen it all before, though. He couldn't wait, and so he's headed straight to the mountains. But I plan to take my time and get a feel for the people whose past I'm seeking. The sun set many years ago on the Inca Empire. But something of the spirit of the Incas lives on in music and dance. It's here in the people. And it's here in the stones of the buildings, so perfectly constructed 500 years ago. The sun was the Incas' supreme god, and the temples they built to worship it in were among the greatest pre-industrial buildings in the Americas. The most celebrated of all was the Coricancha, the fabled Temple of Gold. Well, these walls look pretty bare now, but once they were totally covered in gold, right throughout the whole temple. And there were golden llamas and golden idols in these recesses, the like of which the world had never seen. In fact, the only 3 Europeans ever to see them were the ones who discovered them, and they also took most of it away. Part of what they took included 700 sheets of gold. Each one weighed 4.5 pounds. But the only thing they didn't take was the great golden disc of the sun. But someone did take it, because by the time the Spanish returned to get it, it was gone. To this day, it's never been found. Its final resting place remains one of the world's great mysteries. Most likely, it's in the Vilcabamba, where Gary Ziegler's gone and where I plan to meet him in a week. The journey takes me in the footsteps of one of the world's great explorers, Hiram Bingham, the man who put the Vilcabamba on the map. Like Gary Ziegler, he was an adventurer, the discoverer of the most famous Inca city of them all, Machu Picchu. But Gary Ziegler's also an archaeologist, so he's the perfect expedition partner. By now, I can't wait to follow him into the mountains. And that means I need transport. Buenas tardes, senor.
Oh, mister, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. The Valley Sagrado?
¿A dónde quiere usted viajar?
A typical way of getting from place to place in Peru is by buying a seat on a truck.
150.
150. Okay, fantastic.
Correcto.
Very good. So for 150 soles, about $40, I have the doubtful honor of squeezing in for a long, slow ride. It's a wind-up. The driver is Don Tieflo. His offsider, Ephraim. I think this is... it's all about technique, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Ahícito.
I think it's like a sweet spot somewhere.
Ephraim, can you give us a hand, mate?
This may be one of the oldest trucks on the road, but no one knows that road better than Don Tieflo and Ephraim. With their help, I will follow a trail over 500 years old, a trail that leads deep into the Peruvian rainforest, to a place of ritual sacrifice, sun worship, and golden cities, the lost realm of the Incas. The Incas believed they were the children of the sun, born on an island in Lake Titicaca. This was their Garden of Eden, the place where it all began. Where I'm going, though, is the place where it all ended. The place where the Incas made their last stand against the Spanish, and where they're supposed to have built their lost cities. The Incas ruled over the largest empire since the Romans. And like the Romans, they built an elaborate network of roads, stretching from the equator halfway to the South Pole, and crisscrossing the continent from the Amazon all the way to the Pacific.
This is a lookout area overlooking Tarai.
Very steep, all the way down. Don Tieflo might be right about keeping your eyes on the road, but sometimes it's easier said than done, because there isn't much of a road to keep your eye on. He's agreed to take me to the top end of the Sacred Valley, to the town of Ollantaytambo, Tambo, where I plan to hire porters for my journey into the Vilcabamba.
Yes, there have been many accidents.
The road is full of sharp bends.
His friends call him El Rey de la Carretera, the king of the road. He's been hauling wool and corn back and forth between Cusco and the Sacred Valley for over 50 years, and probably in the same truck. On a hillside near the ruins of Pizak, I get my first look at the Urubamba Valley, the Sacred Valley.
This gully along this small valley ends up in a creek which flows into a big river, the Vilcanota River, which goes down to the Sacred Valley of the Incas.
I can't believe it's amazing that they built them by hand, right?
Luego, las andenerías.
Then the terraces of the ruins of Pizak. This is the most impressive, most elaborate section.
The Pizak fort guarded what was the breadbasket of the Inca Empire. Rank upon rank of terraced gardens line the valley. When the Spanish first arrived, they were still planted with corn and potatoes that were the staple foods of the 15 million strong Inca nation. These days, most lie overgrown and ignored. In fact, Peru produces less food today than it did before the Spanish conquest. One of the many advantages of travelling with a veteran truck driver like Don Tieflo is that he knows all the best truck stops.
There is nothing like a good typical dish of cracklings after a long day's work.
You find small roadside kitchens like this all over Peru, serving up the same food that kept the Incas going, corn and potatoes. The favourite meat of the conquistadors, pork. In this case, deep fried.
Good food? Very good food. Very good food.
Casera, por favor.
3 glasses of chicha, please.
Then there's chicha, the maize beer that was the sacred ceremonial drink of the Incas. Today, though, it's mostly drunk as a low-alcohol alternative to regular beer.
Basa grande. I'd like a big glass, please.
Chicha.
Traditionally, brewing chicha is women's work. Recipes are passed down the generations, mother to daughter. As a result, no two brews are ever the same.
Fill it up, madam. Right up. I want David to really try this.
If I get through this, I deserve a medal, I think.
Salud, David. Salud, Efraín.
That's actually very good.
But they do all have 3 things in common: maize, water, and a magic ingredient.
La chicha la preparan con jora. Y las mujeres mastican un poco y ¡ta! Para que fermente.
No. What he's just told me is this stuff is prepared by basically women chewing the corn up in their mouths and then spitting it into a barrel, and then it ferments. It doesn't taste as good as I thought it did. No, not for me.
Oye, ya pues toma. Toma, pues este hombre.
Back on the road again, and Don Tieflo and Ephraim and their magnificent old truck have got me almost all the way to my destination. Of all places to stall in the Sacred Valley, this is probably the worst. Impossible to get off the bridge and impassable for traffic. And hand cranking this thing was never easy, for anyone.
Crank it up faster, David.
The Incas didn't have truck gods, of course. In fact, they didn't use wheeled transport at all. But if they had, I would have offered up a short prayer right now. Getting to Oriente Tambo on time provides an unexpected bonus. The day we arrive, a local carnival is in full swing. People have come into town from all the surrounding villages. This means I can most likely hire the porters for my journey right here. Not having to go from village to village will save days.
David, te presento a Alejandro.
Alejandro is from the Patacancha Valley, the same valley Hiram Bingham hired his porters from.
Del Valle Patacancha.
5 hombres.
Gaan con mas kamon que sokta planisheki campus en Ispa. Ja, muy bien. Poconche camello.
Okay. I think I've got my porters.
Which means I can have the rest of the day off to enjoy the carnival. One of Peru's links to its past is the traditional dress of the Andean women. The hats, heavy petticoats and plaited hair are not Peruvian at all. It's a dress code imposed on them in the 18th century by Charles III of Spain. Back then, he ordered all his colonial subjects to dress in imitation of the Spanish peasantry of the day. 250 years later, most of them still do. The main event is a competition where riders try to grab a corn cob suspended on a rope. The idea is simple enough, but like trying to start Don Tieflo's truck, it's not as easy as you might think. Beginner's luck, maybe, but not so lucky for the prize.
No, thank you for you. Didn't quite bank on that. I don't think I'll be able to get tickets through customs. Thanks.
The Incas not only worshipped the sun, they also celebrated the natural world, thunder and lightning, the mountains, lakes and rivers. The Urubamba River is one of the Incas' most sacred. And when you see it at its mighty, thundering wildest, it's easy to understand why. At yesterday's carnival, I met this man, Eric Arenas, and he's offered to take me to meet my porters downriver. It's a 9-hour walk to our rendezvous point, or about 90 minutes by river. Trouble is, Eric's a former Olympian and Peruvian kayak champion, and I'm not. This is as good as whitewater kayaking gets, and as dangerous. Get caught in the undertow on the wrong side of one of these rocks, and your kayak will snap in two, and so will you. For me, this is a recurring cycle of terror, adrenaline rush, and calm. But when you fall in, it's nothing but terror. Time slows down, directions get confused. Fight a river like this, and you lose.
Well, I've been out of my depth there, but at least I'm here. I'm going to save these as well. Rest can come later though. Tomorrow I climb to the roof of the Andes and find the first clues pointing to a place that's remained hidden from the world for over 400 years. "400 years ago, a band of Spanish soldiers emerged from the Peruvian jungle to gaze on this land, their long-sought prize, the Vilcabamba. This was the rebel Incas' hideout, their last bastion against the pillaging Spaniards, the place they hid what was left of their gold and culture. I must go deep into this mountain stronghold, from the edge of the Sacred Valley through the high mountain passes of the Andes to Urak Rumi. I'd left the river unexpectedly early, but luckily it's only a short walk to my rendezvous point. Sorry I'm late.
Hola, ¿cómo está?
Nice to see you.
Me presenta mi amigo David.
Hey, pleased to meet you.
Alejandro's
friend is David Espeo,
translator, shaman,
and for the next 2 weeks, an invaluable source of information about all things Inca. Yeah, have you been waiting long?
Not too much, you know, but we're just enjoying some drinks. And
I'd love a beer, actually.
Would you like to
It's been
join
a long
us?
way.
Let's go.
True to his word, Alejandro has organised a small team of porters. These guys have spent all their working lives doing nothing but haul gear through the Vilcabamba. Even so, we're planning on going places even they've never been. Luckily though, Alejandro has organised us a mule skinner and guide called Juvenal Cobos, known as the Old Man of the Mountains. But before we go anywhere, coca. Just about everyone in the mountains chews these bitter-tasting leaves. So, how do you take this?
Well, basically what you have to do is take the end of the leaves. Before you chew it, you just off the mother.
Coca was sacred to the Inca, which is hardly surprising as it's a kind of wonder plant. It suppresses hunger and altitude sickness, relieves stomach aches. It even allegedly eases the pain of childbirth. But most of all, it provides energy. The only thing this stuff doesn't do is give you a high. Despite being the same stuff that they make cocaine from, you'd have to actually eat about a ton of it just to get any narcotic effect. It's more like coffee. It just gives you a good buzz when you're up in the mountains. It's said that by chewing coca, Inca messengers could run 150 miles a day. We're planning a much more modest 10 miles. Legend has it that the Vilcabamba was where the Inca hid their treasure, and it's easy to understand why. It's not just that it's a long way from anywhere, it's also the crippling combination of the terrain coupled with the altitude. What's normally a 10-minute stroll at sea level becomes an hour-long haul at this height. When Hiram Bingham first came up here, he was an absolute amateur, and so it really hit him hard. We're nearly at 10,000 feet, and he'd be stopping every 50 feet. Well, I can understand why. It's a pretty hard slog up here.
10,000 feet, 3,000 meters. Doesn't matter which system you use, when you start getting this high, it's hard going in anyone's language. The Andes Range is the longest mountain chain on Earth. The terrain varies from jungle to glaciated ice peaks. At this altitude, even the slightest breeze is bone-chilling.
It's a bit cold up here, you know?
You know, we have a saying here in the Andes.
Yeah, what?
Sasanke nyam purinapa kashan.
What does that mean?
Whatever goes up keeps on going up. What do you think?
Man, I'm just going to be happy when we start going down.
Sadly, that's still a long way away. Every now and then, though, we do get to a ridgetop, and the terrain flattens out for a short stretch of pampas.
What's so exhausting when you get up here onto the pampas after climbing up, we're about 12,000 here, is that it's swampland, sinkholes, and it's just exhausting walking through this mud, and there's mosquitoes everywhere.
But where there's water, there's often an Inca site, because a reliable water supply was an essential requirement when the Incas were looking for places to build their cities. On the late afternoon of the 9th of August 1911, Hiram Bingham came across this Inca watercourse. As soon as he saw it, he knew he was near a significant site. And this was it, Urak Rumi, the White Rock, known to the Inca as the House of the Rising Sun. Well, there's not much of a house left these days. And the White Rock is more of a black rock because of the lichen covering it. The Inca believed certain mountains, springs, caves and rocks were all endowed with magical significance. Like shrines along a pilgrimage route, Urak Rumi was one such place.
Why was it so important to the Incas?
Oh, this because Manco Inca, one of the last Inca ruler, who set up his new capital here in Bitcos, in this area. So this was like the shrine, like the temple of the sun.
Okay.
One of the most important places in this area.
The Inca were stonemasons without peer. And their legacy can still be seen in the way these guys make a camp oven. The idea is to light a fire inside, heat the rocks until they're ready to explode, then throw in your potatoes, collapse the stones, and put on your meat. Cover it all over, and then let it cook for an hour or so. But not all cooking is done in the oven. Spit roasting is the preferred way of preparing the most traditional of all Andean meats, guinea pig.
Oh, it's good.
You like it?
Yeah. So did the Incas eat a lot of guinea pigs?
Yeah, on special occasions, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, when we were guests, you know.
Because you know back home we keep them as pets.
No. We eat them here.
So the people that live up in these remote areas, do they still consider themselves as Incas?
Native, yeah.
Yeah?
Quechua people.
Yeah. So is that do they take on some of the ways of the Inca? Do they think of themselves as Incas
Sure.
still?
Yeah, I feel like that myself.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, well you look like a lot of the
Thank you.
paintings
I
and
got my
drawings I've seen.
nose, you know, like. Thank you. Nice.
The spirit of the Inca is not only alive and well in David Espeo, it's also here in these mountains. And tomorrow we head for one of the most sacred of all Inca sites. A place so remote, more gringos will climb Mount Everest this year than have been to where we're going in the last 400 years. High on a mountain plateau in the Peruvian Andes, a ceremony to greet the dawn, unchanged since the time of the Inca. Holy man David Espeo leads the porters in asking the mountain gods for their blessing and safe passage. Today we must climb to one of the most sacred of all sites in the Vilcabamba, Inca Wase. But first, we present gifts to the mountains, and the nature of our destination demands only the most powerful offerings. A piece of guinea pig skull, llama fetuses, amulets in the shape of humans, and herbal alcohol. Its potency is increased by being offered in a shell carried to the mountains all the way from sea level. Only after the mountain gods have been invoked and the offerings burnt can the next stage of my journey commence.
Pachamama.
This is the hardest leg of all. Trekking high in the cold thin air, we must pass through the cloud line on our way from Yupanka to Inkawasi, perched high in the Punkuyok Mountains. Yupanka's where we agreed to meet archaeologist Gary Ziegler, so David Espeo and I decide to strike out on our own, leaving the porters to locate Gary's campsite. Weather in the Andes can change in moments. This is called cloud forest for a good reason, and it's not long before the drizzle starts. They may have been among the greatest road builders of all time, but maintenance in the Andes seems to have died out with the last Inca.
Well, believe it or not, this was once an Inca road, but over 400 years, these things have all collapsed. So a lot of the time you just have to go straight up the hill.
The Inca also ripped up many of the Vilcabamba's roads and pathways so the Spanish couldn't follow them, especially if they led to an important place like Inkawase. Our first glimpse It's still 3 hours away across a mist-filled valley, but in view at last. For the Incas who tried to recreate their empire in the Vilcabamba, this was their equivalent of the Vatican, their Mecca. The place where the last of the Incas kept their most holy relics. Hidden in the clouds 4,000 meters above sea level, 13,000 vertical feet of rugged terrain has protected this most sacred of sites for centuries. Even when you're almost there, climbing the carved steps leading to the top of the ridge is equivalent to taking the stairs to the top of the Empire State Building. 6 hours after leaving the Porters, we finally arrive. And right on cue, the sun comes out.
And this is where they think the golden disc of the sun came?
Looks like. Yeah. This looks like a place here. I mean,
Incahuasi is a testament to the decline and fall of the Inca Empire.
It's one of the highest, in the Vilcabamba mountain range.
For nearly 500 years, the Incas had ruled most of South America from Cusco, the richest and most fabulous city of the Americas. It took the Spanish only a few short years to reduce them from mighty palaces to this humble temple. But at least it remained undisturbed. The conquistadors never got here.
It doesn't surprise me that the Spanish didn't get up here. Their horses couldn't have walked up, and with all that body armour, it would have been impossible. It also doesn't surprise me that Bingham didn't get up here, because it really is a hell of a hike. What is surprising is that the Incas got up here at all and built this place.
No one really knows if Incahuasi ever housed the golden disc. No one's ever found it, but they chose its location for a very good reason.
Look at, see the reflection over there?
Yeah.
In that lake? So that's a wild rock you see over there.
Well, this is why it was built here.
Yes. So see, the clouds now is covering this, but when the clouds clears, you can be able to see the reflection of that white rock in the lake. So I think that's why the beliefs of people here know that the Inca turned into this white rock.
Oh,
and
really?
It became like a sacred. That's the main reason why they built up this temple here.
I can see
such a location,
Because of the nature of the terrain, the valley Incahuasi sits above is nearly always filled with cloud. However, it generally clears for a short while around midday. When it does, you can see a tiny lake reflecting the white stone outcrop. To the Inca, this was sacred geography at its most potent. Our two-man pilgrimage over, and we're in luck. The Porters have located Gary's camp. Gary's been here a couple of days, and he's already probed into the jungle.
Bueno, Aurelio, ¿recuerdas el camino Inca que encontramos la semana pasada?
Gary's an old-school explorer, one of the last of a dying breed, a modern-day Hiram Bingham, who's devoted his life to helping locate Peru's lost cities.
So what we plan to do is to go up to about this level of altitude.
How high is it going to be?
It's going to be above 3,000. I'm guessing about 3,700 meters. And then we're going to clear trails and look for indications.
This is what I've come all this way to experience. The chance to find one of the Inca's lost cities. The thought of it affects us all. The atmosphere is electric.
I'm pretty sure that we're going to find something significant up there.
And find something we did, like Hiram Bingham 90 years before us. We're about to hack our way through some of the densest jungle on Earth and enter another of the Inca's lost cities. Peru's Vilcabamba region is home to some of the densest jungle on the planet. This is the domain of the puma, the scorpion, and the deadly bushmaster viper. But right now, they're the least of my worries.
One of the things about travelling in this jungle is all the bugs that get you. I've actually got one, a really fierce one, called the puma wakanchi, which translates to make the puma cry. And I tell you, when it bites you, it really does.
I'm on my way from the Pencuyok Mountains to Les Esparta in central Peru. But before we can go anywhere, we must cross the sacred Vilcanota River.
Here we go, guys. Now this river is called...
The Vilcabamba is cut off on all sides by rivers. That's what made it such a perfect stronghold for the Inca.
Okay, I'm going out over the edge.
Okay.
I'm out. Gotcha. Oh.
And while getting across is one thing, getting out is quite another.
Good.
And it's not just me. There's quite an art to keeping this thing steady. On dry land, the porters are as sure-footed as they come, but even they find the river crossing challenging. The climb to the ruins is tough, a 1 in 10 incline. Pack a trail out here one day, and 6 months later, it's gone, reclaimed by the jungle. Little wonder cities and temples still remain hidden from view. After 4 hours of steady marching, a glimpse of a wall. Then another. Then a watercourse. And suddenly it seems as if the jungle is cloaking buildings everywhere.
Oh, this is amazing.
Look at this wall. Can you believe this? What have we found?
In amazement, we push forward through the overgrown streets and into buildings long ruined.
Well, that goes on and on.
At moments like this, it's hard to know what to say.
Here? David, look at this window. This is definitely Inca.
It keeps going.
David, ustedes pueden esperar allá, descansen.
Gary tells the porters to take a break while we try to work out the extent of our find.
No wonder they never found it. I mean, it's totally covered in jungle.
I don't even know what to say. I don't have the foggiest of what.
Have you ever seen anything this big? Is this the biggest thing you found?
I think it is. I have no idea the extent of it.
Okay, look at this view.
Wow, that's the Vilcanota River. This is typically Inca.
Well, because they build on views like this.
Yeah, the river was one of the most sacred objects. The Vilcanota was the Vilcamayu, the earthly representation of the Milky Way. one of the most important things to the Inca.
This is really overgrown too.
This could well be a temple to the river. And I'll bet, up in the clouds, I'll bet we're looking exactly at the ice peak Veronica, which was also very important.
So this could be a really major find.
Yeah.
Yeah?
We don't know what we've got. We're going to get the guys up here and clear it and see if we have time to see what else is around us. There's got to be more.
Well, let's get a break.
Okay, let's take a break.
And,
I'm about wiped out. How about you?
But when you've got ruins to clear, breaks don't last long. At first, we put our backs into it. Then, as the worst of the undergrowth is cleared, we ease up, being careful not to damage anything. And gradually, the building starts to take shape. Moss-covered walls see daylight for the first time in centuries. Before too long, the jungle starts to give up its secret.
Vamos a ver la distancia de este muro.
For centuries, the cities of the Incas disappeared from view. Like Atlantis, El Dorado and Shangri-La, they became places of legend, sought after but never uncovered. You know, one of the odd things about Hiram Bingham was that when he came and discovered these sites, he knew nothing about archaeology. And he travelled around with this book, which is the Royal Geographical Society's Hints to Travellers. It's got everything you need to know about discovering an ancient site, if you happen to, like we've just done. Even got a little ruler. Thing is, I know nothing about this, of course, but Gary does, so I'm relying totally on him and not the book. But it seems our euphoria is premature. We are not the first, as we'd hoped. Gary Ziegler's identified it as the town of Sapamarca, a place noted but never visited by Hiram Bingham.
Yeah, we're going to finish over here. Go ahead. I'll keep working.
In fact, it's almost never been visited at all, and certainly never been filmed. The Incas may be long gone, but these walls still stand in mute witness to the glory of the greatest empire of the ancient Americas. I wonder what may lie hidden and forgotten here. Lost gold, the sweat of the sun as the Incas called it, maybe even the golden disc itself. I had set out from the other side of the planet to find such a place. Now it will be for others to take on the painstaking work of exploration. One day I'll come back, when Gary Ziegler and others have pried its secrets from the stones. For now, though, it's enough just to know that there are places like this, still waiting to be found. And that is what always keeps me going on my journeys to the ends of the earth. This is the world's no man's land, a place where East meets West. Blood feuds, tribal vendettas, and mountain warfare are a way of life in what is called Transcaucasia. Here, these crumbling towers have defeated everyone from Alexander the Great to Attila the Hun and Boris Yeltsin. Hi, I'm David Adams, and my work as a photojournalist takes me to the ends of the earth. Right now, I'm in Georgia, into Sheti, a land that has never been conquered. But it's also a land of legendary riches, the place where the legendary heroes, Jason and his Argonauts, came in search of the Golden Fleece. I'm sailing off the coast of Georgia, once a republic in the former Soviet Union. And I'm following in the wake of some of the world's first explorers. 2,500 years ago, a boat journeyed to this coastline. Aboard was Jason and his Argonauts. That lighthouse over there marks the mouth of the Rioni River, the waterway they took to enter the land of the legendary Golden Fleece. I'm here to see what lies behind that legend and to discover what Jason would find if he were alive today. My journey starts on the eastern shores of the Black Sea. From here, I go deep into the Caucasus, following the mythical route of the Argonauts until they reach the Caspian Sea. Of course, it was largely imaginary, a myth. According to legend, Jason sailed his ship the Argo here to answer a challenge. If he went to a land beyond the ends of the earth and brought back a golden fleece, he would be made a king back home in Greece. So if I'm to follow in his footsteps, I need my own transport, my own version of the Argo. Then, out of the blue, I saw her. She was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. She was blue, she was shiny, she was Russian, but was she for sale?
It's for sale? Is it a Russian bike?
As you can see, the Georgian language is not my strength.
How many years? Huh? How many years is it? 10 years old?
This conversation was going nowhere, when suddenly and unexpectedly into my life walks the girl who is going to be my guardian angel.
Can I help you?
I know this is for sale, but I can't understand what he's saying. How old is the bike?
It's very very good.
Age, mileage, condition, all seem to be okay, but what about the price?
How much does he want?
He said 2,000 Georgian lari.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Does it work?
Right now, things aren't looking too good. The more he tries to kick life into his elderly machine, the less I'm interested.
Shall I try? Maybe I can get it better.
Why not?
I haven't kick-started a motorbike since the days of my old trail bike back in the Australian bush. And no one's more surprised than me. But looking at those faces, I'm not quite so sure. Maybe they know something I don't. But I'll risk it. I buy her. Now, all I need is a guide. And maybe, just maybe, I found her too. Meet Ear. Like many Georgians, she's familiar with the legend of the Golden Fleece.
So that's where Jason the Argonauts would have come to?
Yes, they sailed up to River Rioni, to Kutaisi. But now it's impossible because there are a lot of barriers. those.
I gather they mine gold up in the mountains?
Oh, you mean Svaneti?
Yeah, Svaneti, yes.
Ia seems to know all about the legend. Better still, she's an ethnologist by training. So my real question is, will she come with me?
You know, I'm busy, but what if I will check today?
Yeah?
I will call to Tbilisi.
Okay.
There's so many things to do.
If you're brave enough to ride on that bike. Yeah?
So on my 83 Dnieper motorbike and wearing a Russian army helmet, we head north. My powers of persuasion work.
You know the way?
Yes, I know.
To get out of here? Because I haven't got a map.
Yes, I know the road well.
Soon, we're out on the open road, and there's plenty of grunt in this old bike yet. It's summer in Georgia, and it's warm, lush, and green. The trees along the road make it look remarkably European. You wouldn't think you were in Asia Minor at all. Soon we cross the Rioni River and pass the legendary spot where the Argonauts are supposed to have arrived around 2,500 years ago. This is Kutaisi, former capital of the ancient kingdom of Colchis. Colchis was the name the Greeks gave to this part of the world. The name Georgia came later, a corruption of the Arabic Georgi. Kutaisi has some rather grandiose buildings, many dating from the Soviet era. But there's one in particular we're looking for, a palace of pleasure for the use of Russian generals and Communist Party members alike. It's been built over a thermal spring, the great Skaltbo Spa. Inside, they have a special treat in store for me. A strange mix of bath and torturer's rack. Before they immerse you, they strap you into a special harness with which to stretch you.
I have a little bit of a problem because I'm a bit long. Obviously most Russian generals are about 3 or 4 inches shorter than me, and now my feet are sticking out and they probably can't stretch me.
While my limbs are being stretched, Ia gets another kind of massage that looks even more like torture. As they say, no pain, no gain. For years, the Soviet hierarchy came from far and wide to wallow in these waters. But the most famous client was also the man who was the guest of honour at its inauguration.
The first person to step into these waters was the most infamous of all Georgians, Joseph Stalin. He was the monster that in the 1930s and 40s was responsible for imprisoning and killing millions of people. Who knows what was said and decided right here with his generals and ministers.
One of the things they'd have not discussed was Stalin's bodily defects. He had a withered arm and 2 of his toes were supposedly fused together. And while the rich and powerful wallowed at Skaltbo, the poor had to make do with the river. A river that was becoming narrower and less navigable for ships like the legendary Argo. Tomorrow, I follow in Jason's footsteps to the place where he got the Golden Fleece. But there may be more to this myth than at first meets the eye. Kutaisi is Georgia's second largest city, and according to the legend of Jason and the Argonauts, it was in Kutaisi that they found the Golden Fleece. My journey has brought me from the Black Sea deep into Georgian Transcaucasia. I'm about to head for the province of Svaneti, high in the Caucasus, following Jason's legendary trail. So the story goes, King Aertes hid the Golden Fleece somewhere here in an enchanted glade. But before Jason could take it, he had to face two challenges. The first was he had to defeat two fire-breathing bulls and then harness them to a plough. And the second was that he had to defeat the great serpent that guarded the fleece. Jason met both challenges, and as a reward, he not only got the fleece, but the king's daughter, Princess Medea, in marriage. That's what the myth says, and some of it is fact. To find out, I head further up the river into dangerous territory. And as if to make the point, just up the road is a checkpoint. United Nations troops keeping the lid on a territorial dispute. It's part of a long-running feud between Russia and Georgia. And while the troops are here as United Nations peacekeepers, they're hardly impartial. They're Russian. For centuries, Transcaucasian tribes have been at war with each other, and we're going to visit one of them right now in Svaneti, home of the warrior Swans. So who were the Swans?
Swans are Georgian. This is small ethnic groups, and they live in high mountains for centuries. Nobody knows exactly when they moved to Svaneti and where from.
The further we go, the more there are signs of danger. We pass a policeman guarding the road against bandits. Only a week ago, a traveller was kidnapped on this road. But there are other reasons why people come to grief in the Caucasus. So what are these on the side of the road? I've been seeing them all the way along.
These are shrines to people who had died. Sometimes they drink, and when they're drunk, so they drive in.
The people who drive off the road and killed here. Now, I've seen a lot of roadside shrines, but this one has a particularly Georgian edition.
This is vodka.
So what's the vodka for?
People, their relatives and friends, when they cross through, they drink to their remembrance.
So we can just drink it?
Yes, why not?
And you raise a toast to?
Usually they say, let God bless their souls.
So what happens if people stop at all these different shrines and they drink and drink and drink, and then they drive off the road?
Yes, of course, and then someone will make a shrine for them.
In Georgia, alcohol is as much a way of life as it is a cause of death. So we, the living, will now toast the dead. Okay. Okay. So we don't know who we're drinking to?
So, to remembrance, to these people.
To remembrance.
To remembrance.
Oh, I don't know how anybody can get used to this stuff. Oh. I think it's very dangerous.
Can you drive now?
This time I can, but maybe not after 3 or 4 more. We're climbing higher into the mountains, and some of them are over 18,000 feet high. Finally, we reach Mestia in the Georgian province of Svaneti, where the Swans have lived in isolation for over 2,000 years. The Swans are famous for their dancing. First, the girls. As they sing, they glide over the ground like princesses in a medieval fairy story. The men also wear medieval costumes, and they've got attitudes to match. Theirs is a tradition of honour, chivalry and knights in armour. Until recently, some of them were still wearing chainmail. And this reputation goes back a long way. Over 2,000 years ago, the Greek geographer Strabo noted their warrior ways. But much of their fighting was done amongst themselves, for Svaneti is a land of vendetta and revenge.
All the faces, it's incredible. Why is it all fenced off everywhere?
They're family laws.
Why do they keep them segregated?
Because of vendettas.
Really?
Yes, it was tradition, part of the life in Svaneti.
Looking at their graves, you see that so many of them died so young. And if only it was for a more worthwhile cause. Trouble is, when you're so cut off from the outside world, small disputes can get out of hand.
So what is the reason for the vendettas?
Sometimes it's woman or property, land. Sometimes very simple thing, like pig. And one of the vendettas started in 1950 when pig crossed the border of neighbors' property. And yes.
And how long did that last for?
It continues still. They killed one guy from another family last year.
It's just something like Sicily.
Yeah.
Over the centuries, all this infighting had an amazing effect on the skyline. Rival Svan families built hundreds of towers, a sort of Mestia Manhattan. Into these, they could retreat if the vendettas got out of hand.
So people lived in these all the time?
Not all the time, just sometimes. When they had troubles with the neighbor families or with other Caucasian tribes. So they stayed here. On first floor, there was someone on duty as guard.
After the first line of defence, we head up to the food storage area. Imagine trying to haul goats, sheep and grain bags up here.
Made for smaller people than me.
This fortress is over 1,000 years old. Pull up the ladder, and from here you could sit out a siege.
So they would have covered up the holes with this?
Yes.
Further up again, and we reach the family area.
That's a long way up. So this was a living room?
Yes, probably this was the living room with 4 windows.
But the most important part of all was right at the top, in the turret.
Oh, wow. So this is where they spent most of their time?
Yes, most of the time. It was more comfortable to stay here, to look out, to watch who is coming.
It's really light and breezy up here. It's nice, isn't it?
It's nice.
So I guess you'd say this is the business end of these towers. They're really well constructed. This wall over this portal actually prevents anything like arrows coming in, but you can drop anything you want through the bottom part. So boiling oil, excrement, arrows, even later on firing through them. And very little could come up. You sealed all the levels, and for weeks you could last up here with enough food. You probably wouldn't see out the vendetta, but you could probably last its worst times.
But the Greek geographer Strabo, writing in the 1st century BC, noted another thing about the Svans. They used a sheep's fleece to prospect for gold in nearby rivers. Could this be the place that gave rise to the Jason legend? Tomorrow I head even deeper into the Caucasus, where wild men ride like demons and the rivers run rich with gold. This is one of the world's great watersheds. Here the rivers in the Caucasus Mountains either run north into Europe or south into Asia Minor. For centuries in Georgian Transcaucasia, they've been gold prospecting in these rivers and streams. I'm leaving the Georgian border province of Svaneti, and soon I'll make my way east along the Caucasus. But first, I want to find out the truth behind an ancient Greek myth. The village of Lely is high in the Caucasus Mountains. Ia brings me here because she thinks it's the best place to find a traditional Svaneti gold miner.
This is gold prospecting village. For 1,000 years, maybe more. Nobody knows exactly.
Well, is there any connection to Jason and the Golden Fleece?
Yes, they still use this all the traditions and fleece for obtaining gold.
They don't get many visitors up here, but Lely's a small village. Everyone knows everyone, and we're looking for a man called Gia. Gia is a local shepherd, but he comes from a long line of gold prospectors, and he spends much of his spare time panning the nearby rivers. He knows this river well, and it still yields gold, as he proves with a quick swirl of his pan. But I want to see the traditional method, the old-fashioned way they used to fleece for gold. At first, it looks like an ordinary sluice, but at the bottom is a sheepskin, a fleece. So if you place the sluice in a stream of fast-moving water and shovel in your slurry, in theory, the lighter gravel should be swept over it and away, while the heavier gold sinks and gets caught in the fleece. There's certainly gold in these rivers, and a few people know where to find it, but Gia's in no hurry to tell us where it is.
I don't think we're going to get that rich quickly doing it this method, or at least with a sluice this size. But Gia, his father and his grandfather have always done it this way, and they've made enough to make a living. And it stands to reason that they've been doing that back through generations, perhaps all the way back to the time of Jason. So who knows? We could have really had a golden fleece.
But this was only the start of Jason's legendary journey. He now had to take his golden fleece back to claim his throne. But according to one version of the myth, the Argonauts didn't go west, the direct route back to Greece. They went east towards the Caspian Sea. And east is where I too will go. Of course, the myth-makers had no idea of the topography. They didn't realise that Transcaucasia was a land of mountains and rivers flowing north and south, rather than east and west. But myth-makers have never let the facts get in the way of a good story. We're now entering the province of Dusheti, in one of the remotest regions of the Caucasus. To get there, we must go by horse.
And so they only stay here for the summer months and then they go down?
Yes.
In the wintertime, this is totally covered in snow?
Yes, there's high snow in winter.
Once more, I'm surrounded by Transcaucasian high-rise.
All these towers are from 15th century.
But these towers were built for a very different reason. They're signal towers to give advance warning of enemy raiders. The Chechens. The Chechen border is just over the range from here. The last time these towers were used in conflict was in 1928. He is taking me to meet a friend who lives with his family in a remote Tusheti valley. In the summer months, Levin and his father run sheep and goats. We help push them up to higher ground.
So Levin, you always ride without a saddle?
If he has some luggage and he goes too far, in this case he takes saddle. But usually he's riding without saddle.
He looks like an American Indian.
Yes, like American Indian.
Rides the same.
Like many who live here, Levin is a brilliant horseman. For Tushetians, good horsemanship is a matter of life and death. For centuries, Tushetian warriors have been chasing the Chechens away from their villages and flocks. Now they put their rough riding to more peaceful use. In a couple of days, there's a horse race, one of the wildest in the world. It's time for a celebration. At Levin's family home, everyone's making traditional Tusheti dumplings called pameni. There's a dinner on tonight, and we're invited. At any Georgian dinner, it pays to have a good head for alcohol. The toasts come thick and fast. We drink a toast of welcome, and then everybody's talking horses.
Tell me about the horse and Tushetians. You're fantastic riders. Why are you such good riders on horses?
I don't know. I was born and grew up on the horse.
But all Tushetians?
All Tushetian people.
But they use them in war as well? The horse?
Yeah. პირველ როლს თამაშობდა ცხენი, საერთოდ თუშეთის და საქართველოს ისტორიაში.
Most important thing in Tushetian's life was horse, as well during the fights.
Then it's more toasts.
To Georgia and Australia.
We're knocking back good Georgian wine. There's no escape. Every drink must be consumed to the bottom, and everyone is expected to remain in control of his faculties, because no Georgian party is complete without dancing. Georgian dancing seems to be led by the men. Then it's the women's turn. And I learned something else about Ia. She's a beautiful dancer. The following day, Levin wants to show us a rare and slightly grotesque piece of Tushetian history. Not far from here are the quarantine vaults, where people came if bubonic plague or the Black Death swept through the valleys. It's really a do-it-yourself cemetery. No grave diggers, no undertakers, probably not even the last rites of the church. All you had to do was come here, crawl into your hole, and die.
So people came up here to die when they had the plague?
Yes, they isolated themselves.
Do we know how old this body is, this person here?
This person is about 3 centuries.
3 centuries old?
Each family, they had their own crypt, like this, yes.
And so the people would come up and bring them food?
Yeah, sometimes they bring, but if it was really illness,
They
and
just leave them?
we are sure that they will not survive in this case, they didn't bring. Sometimes mothers, they were coming with their cradles, with babies. They knew that if they were ill by plague,
they would both die.
Death has been a constant reality in the Caucasus, be it due to vendettas, Chechen raids, or bubonic plague. And as we listen to songs of sorrow, the fires atop the towers are burning. This time, not as a warning of enemy raids, but to summon the greatest horseman in the land. Tomorrow's the great race, a real death or glory ride over rough terrain. And I intend to take part. Once a year in the Republic of Georgia, they descend from near and far on this remote valley high in the Caucasus. This is the race of the wild mountain horsemen of Tusheti, and it's said to be one of the roughest races in the world. As I cross the Caucasus, following in the footsteps of Jason and the Argonauts, I'm heading towards Azerbaijan and the Caspian Sea. But for the moment, I have a race to run. In an old pagan festival, they kill a ram and mount its head on a shrine. It's this that symbolises the spirits of the valley. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning, and already I'm beginning to wonder which spirits are being invoked, the valley or the vodka. Levin makes his own offering. He's one of the favourites and hopes the spirits look kindly on him. Just to make doubly sure, he lights candles under the watchful gaze of the ram. By now, it's 11 o'clock and the vodka spirits are really flowing, though it hasn't affected anyone's balance yet. Getting down seems a bigger challenge than getting up, and another glass of vodka's waiting at the bottom. Here they serve vodka in bulk. In a curious link with Jason, the prize is a fleece. We head for the starting line up the valley. Saddles are optional. And thank goodness I opted for the saddle. It rains. Not ideal conditions in this 5-mile free-for-all. This is horse racing at its wildest. Soon rain and grit take their toll. A rider falls a short distance from the line. Another falls almost on the line, if there's a line at all. The race just seems to peter out in the chaos where spectators and horses meet, sometimes rather violently. And who won? Well, that's a matter for debate, and probably still is. This father's certain his boys won. Maybe he did. Whatever. He's the stuff of which legends are made. As for me, even with a saddle, I just wasn't in the running.
Well, that was a pretty stonewall last. Problem was the tie rope came off, but dangling behind the horse and I couldn't see it. That's not to say that I would have done any better if it hadn't been dragging along the ground. We did about 5 miles through that sort of country. I can tell you, it's no wonder I came last. These guys are absolutely brilliant horsemen.
I am Silamazes. I am Duchess. Go,
With With the rain pouring and the wine flowing, it's a long day of drinking, dancing and horse stories. And as evening approaches, they start the long ride home. Some, no doubt, to nurse hangovers all the way. Sadly, it's time to leave. Ia must return to her work in the city, and I must continue my journey east on Jason's trail. Our route takes us via the Georgian capital, Tbilisi, where Ia lives.
David, I like this city view.
Tbilisi, with its castles, boulevards and Orthodox churches, has been the Georgian capital for 1400 years. But it's a city with a turbulent history, and nostalgia summons me to a place I'd been before, Parliament House, where as a young journalist, I'd got my first scoop. This is not my first time in Georgia. 10 years ago, I was here at the time of one of the most important events in modern Georgian history, when the new president, Ziad Gamsakhurdia, declared independence from the crumbling Soviet Empire.
The crowd is unbelievably excited. Georgia, again, is a country and a republic. But the euphoria of independence was short-lived. Only 8 months later, Georgia was embroiled in civil war. Eight years later, Georgia may be the poorer, but at least it's had some stability and independence. I'm now leaving Georgia and heading east towards the Caspian Sea. Ia agrees to come and see me off on one condition: she drives. We reach the Azerbaijan border, and now it's time to say farewell to my companion and guide.
Passport, please.
Anyway, there's a visa there.
Ia will return to Tbilisi and her normal life, while I head east and continue my life of travel.
Yes.
Bus stop down there?
Bus stop is nearby, not far.
It's okay? Thank you. Thank you very much, huh? It's been fantastic. You have a safe trip, huh?
Yes.
And I'll call you from Baku.
Okay.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Thanks, bye.
Sadly, we say our goodbyes, but my journey must go on. Now I'm traveling on one of the world's oldest roads, the Silk Road. And I'm about to open the final chapter in my quest for Jason and the Argonauts.
Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar.
5 times a day, this mullah prepares to deliver the traditional Islamic call to prayer. He's a muezzin in the Azerbaijan city of Sheki, and when the faithful hear his call, it's unassisted by loudspeakers or any electronic aid.
Allahu Akbar.
This is the Asia Minor end of Transcaucasia, and the contrast between Christian Georgia and Islamic Azerbaijan couldn't be more marked. I'm now on the final leg of my journey from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea, as I follow the spirit of Jason and the Argonauts. Once in Azerbaijan, it doesn't take long for the green of Georgia to give way to an arid landscape. That myth about Argonauts sailing down rivers is wearing thin. I see no rivers and very little water. Now, I'd heard of a mysterious mullah who lives like a hermit, who's supposed to give comfort to travellers.
Assalamu alaikum.
Language, nationality, faith, none of it seems to be a problem.
I'm a traveller, and I've come a long way.
And he often gets visits from non-Muslims.
And I wonder if you could give me a prayer for my travels.
I don't know if he understands a word of what I'm saying, but I receive my blessing. And his message is simple. It doesn't matter what religion you are. The most important thing is to have a God and to have faith. If you carry your God in your heart, you'll be a good man. Amen. Now there's a familiar word, and it's common to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And it means simply, so be it. And as if to rub it in, I get a series of thumps on my back with a stone. Then a flick of water and a small present. A stone wrapped in plastic. My good luck charm. I'm now heading down the road to Baku, and down the road, literally, because the closer I get to the Caspian Sea, the further below sea level I go. The Caspian is 90 feet below sea level. That's 27 meters. And on its shores, Baku, the oil-rich capital of Azerbaijan. For over 1,000 years, this area's been known for its oil. Like cloth, Baku oil too was traded along the Silk Route. Oil for lamps, oil for embalming, and oil for anointing. It's said the oil that anointed Jesus Christ may have come from here. Azerbaijanis are similar in a way to Iranians, but walking through Baku's streets, you'd never know it. If Iran's fundamentalist mullahs saw this, they'd be outraged. And it's not just Western decadence they'd object to. Decadent Islam is also here. And the belly dancers who used to gyrate their hips for sultans, khans and shahs now dance for the mafia mobsters who control much of Baku. And it's the oil that brings them here. They say that behind every oil rig lurks a mafia syndicate. But the oil rigs hide something even more vicious than the mafia. A mass of deadly vipers. A bite from one of these can deliver a lethal dose of venom. But here, there's value in venom. Viper venom is used to make heart disease drugs. It's also used as a coagulant for surgical operations.
And they're very hard to see.
These viper catchers have had their fair share of snake bites and have been collecting snakes for many years.
Let's take a photograph?
To catch them, they've invented special tools. A long wand to hold the viper's head, and forceps to grab it from a safe distance. Then into the bag with it. After one viper bite, you've probably got 8 hours.
Oh, David, посмотри.
There's no way I'm getting close to one of these. Back at the laboratory, they milk them for venom. If ever there was an occupation that requires a steady hand, it's this. $1 gram of viper venom sells for $200 US, which makes it more valuable even than gold. I seem to remember something about Jason wrestling with serpents. But to tell you the truth, I'd all but given up on the Jason myth until I visited the rocks of Gorbistan. All around me is evidence of human habitation 10,000 years ago. Everywhere, there are rock carvings. Suddenly, I see an ancient sheep. Even more intriguingly, a ship. Could it have been the inspiration behind the myth? Maybe Jason did come this way in reality. So I'm back on his trail. I want to ride my own Argo out where the myth makers say Jason and his Argonauts sailed. Suddenly, the myth inspires me again. So if Jason were alive today, where would he have gone? What sort of person would he have been? He'd probably have been an oil billionaire, his gold pumped from below the Caspian. Black gold, the oil which runs world economies and still fuels the flames of belief. But truth is never as romantic as myth. And behind the myth of Jason and the Argonauts was probably a real story. A story about a voyage of discovery. A story about a group of brave men who risked all to journey to the ends of the earth and returned to tell the tale.